Hey everyone, welcome to Gen X Smarts the Spot. Today I've got my old friend Keri Smith from 𝗙𝗵𝗻 back with me, and we're going to talk about the Menendez brothers, both in real life and the new Netflix docu-series called Monsters. But first, Keri, tell everyone a little bit about yourself and where they can find you.
You can find me at 𝗙𝗵𝗻_𝗂𝗂 and I do a podcast all about I guess you would say, the crazy state of the world through the lens of social justice ideology, understanding social justice ideology, my old ideology better.
Well, if
And
you
I'm
want,
very happy to be here, Tracy.
this is the first time on the channel since I rebranded, isn't it?
Yes,
I
Gen
thought
X
so.
marks the spot. I like the name.
Yeah,
It's a good
I did
name.
that because I was no longer keto. I've just been eating a balanced diet, and I no longer do just true crime. So I thought that keto and crime was a little disingenuous. So,
Hmm. I love it. It's more
but
accurate and it's a clever name.
yeah. Oh,
Well, I'm excited to talk about this case.
me
It's
too.
back in the news because of the show.
That, and I guess there's some people coming forward trying to put forward more of the essay accusations that they put forward against their parents in the beginning to try to get found not guilty. So a lot of stuff going on with this, but definitely because of Hollywood's interest in this case. So let's talk about the real case. Two brothers, Lyle and Eric Menendez. Lyle is the older brother. Eric is the younger. They were the children of Jose and Kitty Menendez. He was an accountant. They came from the East. He was born in Puerto Rico, moved here, met his wife, went to college in Illinois, oddly enough, and then relocated to the East Coast, where he was a successful accountant, and then came to LA because he became a VP for uh, one of the big movie and music companies. I can't, that name, it
Oh
wasn't
yeah.
Warner. It
It
wasn't
starts
Warner.
starts with an I.
Um,
I'm
let's
trying.
see. Oh, Lord. One of the biggest. I swear, ever since COVID, I have the brain fog.
Me too. I
I,
I don't I had COVID fog and I don't
yeah.
think I've ever fully gotten back to
No, I
100%.
sometimes just can't remember anything, and it's
Yeah.
scary. We could get into a whole big political discussion about that, but anyway, he was a big
Live
record.
entertainment and
Yeah,
RCA Records.
right. He was a big record executive. Managed bands such as Menudo, which is one of the big was one of the big boy bands of the 70s, 80s, and 90s. But anyway, and so August 20th, 1989, the two boys walked into their parents' living room in Beverly Hills and killed them with shotguns. And they were arrested in March of the following year in 1990. And in the interim, they had managed to spend, I think, $700,000 between them of their parents' money, which was one of the big things that the DA in Los Angeles honed in on. And they were tried the first time in 1993, 94. That was a mistrial. And then they were finally convicted in the second trial in 1995, 96, getting life in prison without the possibility of parole. And that is the story in a nutshell.
Yes.
And fast, go ahead, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Okay. Fast forward, there's always been a huge interest. This was one of those big televised trials in the 90s. It was right up there with O.J. Simpson, any of the other big televised trials from the 80s, 90s. Court TV broadcast the entire first trial daily. I remember watching it. And then they did not broadcast the second trial because I guess the judge kind of threw a hissy fit about it. And one of the major reasons that there had to be two trials is because they had a perfectly split jury, men and women. And when the SA abuse allegations came into play, it was basically a split. Women believed them, the men did not. There's actually been studies about that. And so there was a locked jury for months, and they ended up ending that in a mistrial. So we fast forward to today, there's renewed interest because Ryan Murphy in his Monsters television show, which its first season came out a couple of years ago, featuring Jeffrey Dahmer, which I found great. I thought it was an excellent show. And now the second season with the Menendez brothers, 9 episodes. And Ryan Murphy is true to Ryan Murphy, hit or miss. He starts out strong and then kind of goes down the toilet. I did not enjoy the Menendez brothers season, but Ryan Murphy, he has produced some of the best shows on television ever, such as Glee, such as American Horror Story, such as 911. They all start out very, very strong, and then they kind of go downhill as the seasons go on. And I see Monsters going in that same direction. But
Mm-hmm.
Keri, what was your opinion on the show?
Um, I enjoyed parts of it, mostly just because I like true crime,
Mm-hmm.
and I liked seeing a dramatized version of this particular crime, which, like you said, captivated America when it happened and was one of the first televised trials, and people knew a lot about it. And it's just one of those horrific things, like when you think about different kinds of murders, like to kill family members like this so brutally. Um, I think that's part of the reason people are fascinated by it. And so I just liked seeing a dramatized account of true crime. I watch a lot of the actual true crime stuff and then dramatizations. But like you, overall, I can't give it a good grade because Ryan Murphy injected a lot of his own perverted, gross fantasy stuff into it, which I did not appreciate.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and what I mean by that is, so uh, a big portion, so the defense that they offered up in the first trials, and in the first trials they had two, like you said, two separate juries, like two
Mm-hmm.
separate trials that were happening simultaneously, one for
Mm-hmm.
each brother, and both
Mm-hmm.
juries were hung. And then in the second trial, they were prosecuted together, no
Mm-hmm.
cameras, and they both were convicted, life in prison. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
found guilty. But they're part of the reason I think they got the conviction that they did in the second trial was because of the fact that they were not allowed to talk about the abuse
Yeah.
that they claimed to have suffered at the hands of their dad, specifically both parents of their dad in particular. And without explaining that, I think you really handicap the defense. And in the first two simultaneous trials for each brother, they talked about this. They never, in the trial portion at least, they never denied that they did the killing. It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't one of those trials where they're saying we didn't do it. They were saying we did it, and here are the extenuating circumstances. And they were trying to argue self-defense, that they thought they feared for their very lives. And to explain why they feared for their lives, they detailed all of this very graphic physical and sexual abuse at the hands of their dad. And Ryan Murphy included all of that, of course, but he also included, and I've heard him and some of the actors describe it as that they were trying to show multiple points of view of what could have happened. And so one of those multiple points of view was this sick, in my opinion, sick fantasy with no basis in reality of the two brothers being lovers. And there's unnecessary scenes like the two of them in the shower together. And it's just, to me, it felt like I was watching Ryan Murphy's own incestuous gay
Yeah.
fantasy play
Well,
out on
you saw that
screen.
come off in the first season too with the
Yeah.
Dahmer stuff. I mean, we knew
Yes.
Dahmer was gay, and that's how he lured these young men into kill. But the way Ryan Murphy portrayed it, it kind of went over the top a little bit. Even though I do think that season was stronger than this season, and I did
It
enjoy.
was stronger.
Yeah,
I enjoyed that one more too.
yeah,
But you're right. I mean, he's got a bit of a reputation as well, like a lot of these guys in Hollywood, like Bryan Singer. Um,
mm,
Ryan Murphy has a
mm,
similar reputation, and I think, that was just a part of him and himself and his fantasies that I didn't need to see injected on the backs of this actual story based on true events. Why are you putting that in there? And actually, Eric Menendez from prison had issued some statements through his wife about how he felt not
Mhm.
not positive about that being injected and how it's all
Mm.
fabrication, and he was really upset about it. Um and I understand why he would be, because
Yeah.
you're just taking these, liberties for what? For titillation, for your own titillation. I didn't
What?
think it was a valid point of view.
Well, you have this whole thing with Hollywood in general. Like, for example, when Hollywood gets involved in a case, the case gets a revival, and they all tend to be going back to the 80s and 90s right now for nostalgia with things like the Innocence Project and just Hollywood in general. I mean, I've done videos on the murder of Paul Howe, where Julius Justice, the man that was convicted of murdering him, got like all these
Mhm.
extra hearings simply because Hollywood took an interest, because the
Yes.
Kardashians took a interest in him. And the same thing here. Now that this show is out, you have one of the former members of Menudo coming out saying that he was abused at the hands of one Menendez. So who do you believe? I mean, is this true? Is this just somebody trying to jump on a bandwagon to get a little bit of fame? But you often see things like real cases get revived, and lots of taxpayer money get wasted on further appeals when Hollywood tries to get involved in this.
Yes. When did the Menudo accusations happen, though? I thought that was
Just
before.
recently, like this year. I haven't even really like jumped
Oh,
into it. I mean, it was just recently, like maybe in the
it's
last 90 days.
oh my goodness. Okay. I didn't realize that was because of, I thought it happened a while back, but you're right. It's Roy Rosello, a former member of the boy band Menudo, alleged that he was drugged in RAPED. I don't know what your rules are on your channel for the things that YouTube
I
censors.
try to
This
say SA, but I have screwed
essay,
up and said the actual R word. I don't. It doesn't bother me if you
yeah,
do.
when he was a teen by Jose Menendez in the 1980s. So, yes, it says their former abuse allegations, talking about the brothers, gained traction in recent years after Roy Rosello, a former member of the iconic 1980s boy band Menudo, came forward with his own allegations that he was molested by Jose. Um, oh no, it was in 2023.
Oh,
In
it
a
was. I knew it was in the
yes,
last several months. Not. It was fairly recently, but I think it was in the build up to this show because they announced. I mean, this second season, what it was going to be about, was announced when the Dahmer season dropped.
okay. So it was in May of 2023. Um, it was in a series on Peacock called Menendez and Menudo, Boys Betrayed. And in
Hmm.
that May of 2023 Peacock series, Rosello made these allegations about the essay that he says Jose Menendez perpetrated on him as well.
Hmm.
Um,
So, in the wake of Hollywood,
yeah. But I personally, I guess we can get into the specifics. I believe their allegations about their father, and so I am tempted to believe the Menudo allegations as well. And I think you might even see more people coming forward. Here's why I believe them. Anybody who, because this was one of the first televised trials, you can go back and you can watch the footage, and you can watch clips, you can watch the whole thing. Um, and in the allegations, what sold me is that what they allege their father did to them,
Mhm.
it goes beyond that. They also, you can see them breaking down when Lyle, the older brother, is on the stand explaining what his father did to him and allegedly did to him. And then they ask him about, and he confesses to when he was a kid having done the same thing to his little brother and
Okay.
experimenting on his little brother with SA. And you can see his little brother, Eric, in the courtroom crying. And for me, if you are going to fabricate something like abuse that your father did to you, and this is what it ultimately led to you fearing for your life, and that's why you killed. If you're going to fabricate that, why would you need to fabricate this little extra detail that implicates yourself doing that as a child to your brother? Why put that in there? And to me, that struck me as very real. And also the emotion around it with him talking about that and basically confessing in front of the public and his brother and apologizing to his brother for what he did to him when they were kids. That was unnecessary. I don't think that someone who is coming up with a lie is going to add in an extraneous detail like that implicates themselves in something that nobody would think like, oh, that's a detail you need to include, if you're going to lie about this.
Hmm.
Um, and so that was one of the big things. And also just their affect and their manner when they were testifying about the sexual abuse and the fact that they had so many family members come forward and say, Lyle had a cousin who stayed with
Right.
them and she came forward and testified in the trial that in the first
There were
trial,
two cousins, I think, that.
there were two cousins that had been confessed to. One of them was when he was a kid.
Hmm.
And according to this cousin, she said she told their mother
Hmm.
and Kitty Menendez, and that Kitty blew it off and said that Lyle was lying.
Hmm.
And, to have family members come forward. And so there were two cousins that testified that they had been told about this years prior. And then there were also other family members who just testified to Jose Menendez's controlling and abusive nature. Um, and so to have that many family members come forward and say that, all of this together
Hmm.
paints a picture for me that I think that it's most likely that their stories about the abuse they suffered was true. That their
I
stories were true.
I think they suffered some sort of abuse, be it emotional, be it him being very domineering. Absolutely. I don't know. I'm not quite sold on the essay part of it. For various reasons. There was the confessions he made to his ex-girlfriend, that actually testified, that said the recordings that came out, that he said that he was able to put on a good act, on the stand, kind of
Mhm.
thing. So being overly emotional, being a good actor to kind of earn sympathy, that's a red flag. There's a fact of how much of the money they went on a spending spree after, killing their parents, and that there was some argument over the father removing them from the will. So there's a lot of stuff in there that said maybe it was partially because of his controlling emotional abuse, and then part of it was because of just good old fashioned greed and wanted to be out from under the thumb of their father. Now,
Well,
as somebody that suffered emotional abuse and sexual abuse in her past, I can say that emotional abuse can have just even more detrimental effect on you than any type of physical abuse. So I understand wanting to be out from under that.
mhm.
Absolutely. And I'm not saying they weren't abused. I do think that probably first degree murder, even though the premeditation, I mean, it was obviously premeditated. They went to a
Yes.
couple of gun shops and tried to get handguns and were denied. So they went through because of the 5 day waiting period, and they were able to get shotguns without a waiting period. So I think that was obviously premeditated. Um, but as far as the first degree murder they were convicted of, I think it's more something like premeditated manslaughter, which means they should already be out of prison, in my opinion.
Well, let me be clear about something. I believe that sexual abuse allegations.
Hmm.
I don't think that means that means that this was a self-defense murder, which was their argument.
Hmm.
So we probably agree on that. I don't agree that it was self-defense. They were not an imminent danger. I understand they were trying to say, but in the mind of an abused child, they're not children though at this time, they're young adults, but still in the mind
They
of
were 19 and
um
21,
yeah,
maybe.
in the mind of the abused, and they were thinking they're in imminent danger. I understand that argument, but I still think you're responsible for your actions. And as you said, there was premeditation. They purchased the guns in advance. Um, I do think there might have been other motivations as well. They did go on a spending spree. I think all these things can be true together.
Hmm.
Um, they did go on a spending spree. Now they were arguing, well, we would always spend crazy money anyway. Yeah, but you weren't buying yourself a Porsche before.
Yeah.
Your dad wouldn't have allowed that probably, but they were going on and buying multiple Rolexes and all this. Um, they did take advantage of the fact that they had just killed their parents to blow through their money. And maybe
Hmm.
they were afraid of being cut out of the will. Um, according to them, he had threatened that. And all these things can be true at once. And I don't believe that a person, even if the essay allegations are true, which I think they are, I don't believe that means you should be found not guilty of murder.
No.
And so I think, yeah, I just wanted to make that clear because we probably agree on that. And I actually don't even think, I don't know, I would have to think hard about
Well, I misspoke.
manslaughter.
There is no premeditation when it comes to manslaughter. Manslaughter is murder without the elements
Right. See, I
of
would still say,
premeditation. So
I would,
maybe second degree murder because there was premeditation there, or maybe it is first degree murder, but there's extenuating circumstances to the sentencing. But I do think they should be released because I do think they've served their time. I don't
we
think
might,
they're
we might disagree on that. I've become
really.
pretty hardline on murder in the past few years. Yeah, I'm kind of like, sorry. I know that you lived in an extremely, because I do believe the allegations. I know you lived an extremely um chal challenging and abusive childhood, but you've revoked your access to citizenship. In my opinion, I don't know. I'd have to think about it long and hard. I'm pretty much against, like, if you take a life, I'm pretty much against you being circulating with the general population again.
Now, me, who's a death penalty, in favor of the death penalty in a lot of cases, who am I? I'm kind of being hypocritical, but I guess this what with the abuse allegations, this one has more of a black and white, and not a black and white, but a gray area to me than like the Julius Jones, Paul Howell
Mm.
situation, or even the Marcellus Williams, Felicia Gale thing, which that was just cold blooded murder for the sake of murder in both of those cases, for the sake of robbery and burglary. So I guess I have a little more sympathy for the Menendez brothers in that there might have been an emotional abuse reaction rather than it just being purely for other criminal behavior, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. It's so interesting how you can have, like, where we agree and where we disagree, sort of, because it's like you can have different opinions on that, both the allegations that they were making to defend themselves, but then different opinions on what the Senate should be, and different.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, I
I
think
don't think
that's
they're dangerous to
interesting.
society. I don't think
Hmm.
either of them are dangerous to society. Now, was Marcellus Williams and Julius Jones? Absolutely, they were dangerous to society. The Central Park Five, who have been, made trotted out to be these media stars, they did it. They raped that woman.
Hmm.
That they did everything they're accused of. They've admitted it, but yet now they've been exonerated and paid millions of dollars for their trouble, and that's horse shit. They are still a danger to society, and it would not surprise me if one of them's convicted of another crime before they die,
Hmm.
because they are dangerous to society, and I know that sounds horrible, but that's just the way I feel about it. And somebody's going to come for me and say, all three of those people you just mentioned that think they're all black. No, it has nothing to do with them being black. They're clearly dangerous to society. You know,
Yeah.
it's not
I,
racially motivated, it's crime motivated. I also believe that Susan Smith and Judith Ann Neely, who are white women, should be kept behind bars because they're dangerous to society.
yeah, I don't know about the Menendez brothers. I think they might be dangerous. I guess that's what I would stop to think about. If I'm leaning towards no, I still think they're a dangerous society. I can't trust your judgment. I don't know. That's just me.
Fair
But
enough. It's just amazing that here we are in 2024 debating a crime that happened in 1989.
right? That's true.
Just like, wow.
Yeah. So
But no,
go
go
ahead.
ahead. No, you go ahead, please.
No, I was going to ask, like, what parts of do you want to talk about the show or the trial
Yes,
or?
yes. The show, it was the first two episodes were pretty strong. I enjoyed them. Then after that, it kind of took this hard veer into camp. And I enjoy
Yeah.
campiness for the sake of campiness, but I don't enjoy campiness when you're trying to tackle a serious subject, because this should never be like a dark comedy. And to me, it veered off into dark comedy. The best part of this show, beyond the first two episodes, was Nathan Lane. I looked forward every time he was on screen just because it's
Oh,
Nathan Lane and I
he
love
did
him.
such a good job playing
I
Dominic
know.
Dunn. Like,
Yeah.
I thought at some points I forgot he was Nathan Lane and was thinking he was Dominic Dunn.
Yeah. He did a fabulous job, and it was nice seeing Vicki Lawrence just pop up out of nowhere, which I'm a huge Vicki Lawrence fan. She was Lee
Wait, who was she?
Lee. Can't remember the
Lee.
lady. Lee.
Who's Lee? I can't remember.
can't
Like,
remember her right. She wasn't a huge part of the plot. She just popped up in a couple of episodes. I'll have to, let's see. Let me see if I can find a picture of her.
I don't even remember who she played.
Let me see.
Oh, the angry juror.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't
It was
even,
nice seeing her pop up because I'm a huge Vicki Lawrence fan.
oh
But
my gosh, I didn't even recognize her.
yeah,
I love her. I didn't even
yeah,
recognize her. I just had to look that up. I was like, she was in
yeah.
it?
So I guess Ryan Murphy hit the nostalgia factor with that for me because
Yeah.
I really enjoyed those. But
Oh, let me tell you one thing I did appreciate of his. Speaking of nostalgia factor, the music.
mhm,
I love Milli Vanilli. I don't
me
care that
too.
they got exposed as fakes. At least they got exposed. We got all kinds of
Yeah,
fakes in society right now who are not exposed.
I still put on Milli Vanilli
Yes,
and just jam out. They're on my playlist. I don't care who sings it. It's great music.
I know. Girl, you know it's
No, it's
true.
true.
Ooh,
Ooh, ooh.
ooh,
Blame It on the
ooh.
Rain
I
was
know.
my jam.
Blame it
Blame
on
it
the
on the
rain.
rain.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And they're
Oh
nice
my
to
God.
look at. I don't care how old.
Yeah.
And one of them sadly died of
Yes, he did.
self deletion, but they're still nice to look at.
Yeah, because that cancellation was brutal when they got canceled for being fakes. They I love that music though, and
Yeah,
was it the first episode that he opened with like a Milli Vanilli song, or
yeah.
it was pretty soon in the
I
first
want to
episode,
say, yeah, yeah.
and I
It was
just was like, what? This is gonna be, and all the music was
because
like
you never
that.
hear
Took
Milli
me right
Vanilli
back.
songs.
Yeah,
They're out there. They're on YouTube. They're on
yeah,
but you never hear Milli Vanilli
yeah.
played anywhere, especially not as part of a soundtrack. So that was a nice thing.
And there was another scene in the limo I think it's when they're either going to or leaving the funeral for their parents. And not Eric, Lyle is all hopped up about, this new business he wants to start, some chicken wing thing or something.
Mhm.
And he starts yelling at the limo driver to change the channel, to change the station. And what was the song that they put on in the
Oh
limo?
God.
Uh, I just died laughing. Let me see if I can find it. Because it was like, again, it was a song that you don't hear that much, but takes you right back to that period. Uh,
Um,
he
was
was demanding.
was it a girl? I'm gonna miss you.
Oh, it might have been. Well, that was definitely Girl, I'm Gonna Miss You was
That's the slow
definitely,
song.
yeah. Uh,
You took the best of me, girl. I'm gonna miss you. It's a very slow ballady kind of song.
yeah, it's like a breakup song.
Yeah.
And he had in that episode, he had Lyle play that song at the end of his speech about his parents at the funeral.
Hmm. Yeah. Like a honeybee, you took the best of me. I think it was that.
Yeah, I think it was too. Oh my goodness. Well, that was one thing I really liked about it.
Yeah, the
And
music was on point. Just like with Glee. That's the reason I love Glee. The music was one of what reason Glee, and that was a Ryan Murphy thing. But as far as storytelling, took a everything Ryan Murphy's a little bit like Zack Snyder for me.
hmm,
It's hit or miss. Like I love Dawn of the Dead 2008. It's my favorite zombie film, bar none. Even better than Romero to me. But then on the flip side, hate Rebel Moon. Terrible, terrible, terrible movie. So with Zack Snyder, it's just like with Ryan Murphy. It's hit or miss.
hmm. Yeah, I feel the same way about him.
Yeah.
I think he's a little, like I said, I have some opinions about him. I think
Yeah,
he's,
they're all a little. I find that if you're of a certain age and successful in Hollywood, he's 50, he's Gen Xer. I think he was born in 65, so he's in our generation. Not that we were born in 65, but he's of the Gen X generation. If you're of that certain age and very successful in Hollywood with big studio money, chances are there's some skeletons in your closet,
yeah,
unfortunately.
yeah,
It's like as much as I love Stephen King, he did write several chapters in it about a child orgy. I mean, what
yeah,
demons are in your head to cause you to come up with that?
yeah, yeah.
As much as I love everything Stephen King does, I love his work. I separate art from the artist.
Yeah.
There's still a screw loose in there.
There's a screw loose in there. Look at his tweets.
Yeah. One of my, but somebody that I follow on YouTube, like something Stephen King said about decency, and everybody was just roasting him about the orgy scene and it. Like
Yeah.
you wrote a story about a child orgy. You have no reason to. You have no room to
What are you
talk.
talking about
Yeah.
exactly?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
But yeah, the show. I mean, overall week, I'm gonna give it a D. It's
Oh,
passable. I'm gonna be probably a lot more hard on it than the average true crimer would be, but
I would
it's
give it a
yeah,
B or a
really.
C. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty, just like I said, just C. I mean, I enjoyed it just because it's about the Menendez brothers, though. Yeah, so,
Yeah,
but you're tougher. You have tougher standards for true crime.
yeah. Well, now I have enjoyed a lot of the true crime oriented shows that have come out on Netflix, the
Mm.
limited series and the movies. Inventing Anna was great. Of course, that was
Oh,
Shonda Rhimes, and I Shonda Rhimes could video a cereal being poured into a bowl and would make it exciting. She's just that good, with great. She did half of ABC owes their very existence to Shonda Rhimes. I mean, her shows pretty much prop up their primetime existence. But that was good. The movie about the assassination of Versace, really good. The same with the O.J. Simpson docudrama they did, really good.
that was good.
I know it's not on Netflix, but Doctor Death on Peacock, also excellent. So
I, I gotta
there's a
watch
way
some
to
of
do the
these.
shows about true crime cases and do them well as a dramatization. But Ryan Murphy did it well with Dahmer. He just didn't do it well here. I don't know. It turned into camp. It became so unrealistic,
It
and I
was
think
so
that's
campy. Yeah.
yeah. I think that's because we don't know a whole lot of what went on. I mean, we have the book that Lyle Menendez co-wrote with two other authors that gives us a limited visibility. But other than that, you have to kind of leave it all to the imagination because there's not a whole lot about their childhood and their growing up and
I
stuff.
still can't believe they never found the guns.
Yeah.
Okay, this is something that, like you said, what is it, 36 years later or something?
Mm-hmm.
And
Gone.
they dumped the guns off Mulholland Drive. Mulholland Drive is, if you live in LA, which I did for quite some time, everybody knows that's where you go to hide a body or guns. I mean, I say that as dark
And
comedy,
then
but it's
shouldn't
true.
the no, it's
And
true. Then shouldn't then police know every inch of that place
right,
if that it's so popular to drop stuff?
right.
I
And so,
think
what do you think? Because
no, I think
why
they
did they not take the cops there? Like, don't you think the cops would have said, and I've tried to find this and I can't find this out. Maybe you
mhm.
found it out. But I wanted to find out, did the cops at least try to find the guns? Did they take the brothers there and say, show us where? And I
No,
can't even
they
find
never
out if they
did. They
why?
never did. They put it together and then they confessed. So they didn't really have to find the guns, which is just, or at least Eric. They broke Eric,
Yeah.
but and then Lyle soon followed. But no, they didn't really. The guns are still out there. Maybe somebody will find them. Maybe they're all rusted, but they'll somebody will find them. And also the whole thing. This is what got me. And revisiting this case, I kept thinking about this. This is a terrible thing to think about. In retrospect, the two people were not just shot, but shot. I mean, they filled them full of holes. There was
Like
no. They had already
10
shot their father
times.
in the back of the head, but just continued to pump buckshot into. Come on, he's dead already.
I think it was 10 shots for their
Yeah,
mom and 8 shots for their dad,
I mean,
just
they
over and
shot
over.
them.
Yeah.
But okay, they went to buy handguns, and there was a 5 day waiting period, so they decided they could go get shotguns, which had no waiting period. So what's the point of the whole waiting period on handguns? It makes no sense. I'm like, it just means you're going to shoot. You're either going to go get another kind of gun, or you're going to shoot somebody 5 days later than you had planned to. I mean, waiting periods do no good. This
No.
crime is a pure example of that.
Yeah. Well, I think the intent is for people who
A
have
cooling off period. Yeah.
yeah, people who are have an
Yeah.
impulsive drive, and that the hope is that there will be some people who will be dissuaded because they'll get back in their right mind or a better state of mind the next day and get help instead, maybe.
Right.
So that you can't just impulsively go get one that day, right? But
Yeah.
again, why long guns then? Why shotguns if you, I don't know, if you can't do handguns?
Yeah. But yeah, they never found the guns, and it was all just pure. I mean, it took them until, March, spring of the following year. This happened summer, not 89. It took them until spring of 90 to make the arrest. So, and in the meantime, these kids, that's mainly what they got the feeling about, is them talking to the relatives, talking to the friends, and seeing these kids buy, as you said, buying Porsches and Rolexes and traveling in Europe and just going wild with $700,000. And that doesn't sound a whole lot. With inflation, that doesn't sound like a whole lot of money today, but you got to remember that was 1989 spending power. So that would probably be the equivalent of 1.75 million today that they spent in about a 7-month period.
That's
So that's what the
crazy.
cops were watching.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And supposedly I've heard that their father was worth 35 million to 75 million. No one really knows. So there was a lot of money there for them to get their hands on.
Can we talk about the Dr. Oziel? So,
Mm-hmm.
so for anyone who's not familiar with the case, one of the big breaks came because at first the brothers were trying to lead the cops to believe that this was maybe a mob hit, and they were talking about how their dad had all kinds of
Yeah, they were talking
business
about
dealings.
from the time he was an accountant, and even in the record business, they said that music business, that he had some shady contacts.
Shady contacts. And so, and because the crime was so brutal, as Tracy said, they were thinking maybe it is a mob hit or this is just,
Mm,
so trying to send a message. It's so brutal. And that was the route that some of them were investigating at the beginning. What happened was that Eric, this is one of the more fascinating parts of the case to me, is that Eric was grappling with the guilt
mm-hmm,
about what he did. He couldn't live with it. He was having nightmares. He
mm-hmm,
was having thoughts about harming himself. He went to, so their dad, Jose Menendez, had ordered them, forced them into counseling with this guy previously called Dr. Oziel. And they had some family sessions and some sessions with just the brothers. And then eventually, I think it was just Eric that was still going to see him.
mm-hmm.
So Eric, for months after the murders, was dealing with all this guilt. And
And he
so
confessed to the doctor.
he confessed to Dr. Oziel. Now, Dr. Oziel was married, but he was having an affair
Yeah,
with one of his patients.
yeah, which it leads us into a whole other thing about ethics. But
Yeah. So he was having an affair with Judalyn Smith.
with
Is that her name?
yeah, and he also
Um,
began recording the sessions he had with both brothers.
and he told her all about it. And again, ethics, all of this, right? And he
Mm-hmm,
started recording the sessions. So at first, Eric went in and confessed, and then they called Lyle, and Lyle came in, and um, he made some threats basically to Dr. Oziel.
mm-hmm,
And later, like in the next session with the two of them, Oziel told them that he had put um, all of his copies of his notes, excuse me, of that session in safety deposit boxes. So if anything happened to him,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
those would get opened and released, kind of as an insurance policy to keep Lyle from killing him. And he started meeting with them regularly and asked if he could record the sessions, and
They have consented.
yeah, they said yes. And so this whole time he's keeping his mistress in the loop, which is crazy.
Mm-hmm,
And then he at one point was trying to uh I think like try to get them to some of this newfound money that he thought they were coming into after their parents died, to like go into business with him.
mm-hmm,
And they did show that that element of it in the show Monsters, that it was just sort of this self-interested, unethical therapist.
mm-hmm.
And what happened was that his mistress, they ended up breaking up. He moved her into his house for a while, and then they broke up, and she went to the police and told them about the tapes. And
Yep.
this, yeah,
And then because of the threats toward the doctor, everything, they actually ended up arresting Lyle first because they considered him the more dangerous one. And because Eric had actually confessed out and out to the doctor, they figured give this kid some time, he'll turn himself in. And sure enough, 3 days after his brother was arrested, he turned himself in. There's
Yes.
always one. When there's two murders, I find in any case where I investigate where it's a dual murder, there's always one that's a little more sociopathic or psychopathic that really has no conscience about it or has less of a conscience about it. And there's
Yes.
one that it eats at them, and that one ends up, uh, you know, getting them both caught. That Leopold and Loeb, another murder I've covered. One Loeb, literally like the telltale heart, was just ascending into madness and ended up turning himself in, and then got the other one caught.
Wow.
Same thing here.
It's almost like Crime and Punishment
Yeah,
also.
yeah.
Um, well, that whole side part of the story is just also
Well,
crazy and
that's a snapshot of
interesting. And
LA culture.
yes,
You got a psychiatrist having an affair with a patient. You got all these other like dirty shenanigans going on with this family and the people that they're associated with. I mean, it just shows how I hate, because I have friends in LA that I love dearly, but there's just a culture of garbage in that city almost, and it goes all the way back to the 80s.
he also, I think, was he operating without a license at the time, or there was something where he wasn't
He
on?
had a license, but he
Okay,
might have been under investigation. Um,
right.
I haven't, jumped into him too heavily. I just know that he's the one that Eric confessed to, and he had a mistress. And let's see if I can find anything about him. He lost his license in 1997, so he was under some sort of investigation.
That's interesting because you know what he does now is he currently lives in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and he's a staff member at Marital Mediation Center, which maybe you don't need to have a license there.
So I guess not. It's
Um,
kind of like I've covered cases where you have these certified life coaches that require no licensing whatsoever, that are, you know, giving counseling in certain states. Like Utah is one that's pretty notorious. You can
yeah,
be like a certified mental health coach that requires nothing except that you said, I'm a mental health coach. I identify as a mental health coach. So now I can counsel you. So yeah, same kind of thing, I'm sure.
that's also just crazy to me. Marital
Yeah.
Mediation Center, and on their website it says the field of marital mediation focuses on improving marriages through mediation as an alternative to divorce. While not all marriages can or should be saved, many couples are happier staying together if they can resolve certain issues. Now, you might ask yourself, why is this doctor who was having an affair with a patient while he was married and even moved the crazy patient into his house with his wife, like, why is he helping
I mean,
couples with their
you would
marriage?
think, but
But maybe he learned his lessons. Yeah.
maybe he saved his own marriage and he's
Yeah.
helping other people do it. Because I think the worst thing you can do to a spouse outside of being
Yeah.
abusive,
Just cheat on them.
is cheat. So if you can save your marriage, maybe he has experience in that.
That's true. If you learn the hard way, I do think. But I don't know if he learned the hard way or not.
Yeah, just
Um,
so much kookiness around this. And then on top of it, the general public got involved because it was broadcast on television. At least the first two trials were
yeah.
simultaneously. I mean, that they would do coverage from one and then break over to the other one, back and forth. So,
The one other quick thing about Oziel
mhm.
before I move on is just if you did go to see him to help your marriage and you knew that he was a therapist from the Menendez, I don't
Yeah.
think I could get past that.
There's probably in some people's minds, they probably want to see him because of that. It'd be
Yeah.
like, I mean, I know he's not I don't even know if he's still alive anymore, but Johnny Cochran, the defense attorney from the
Hmm.
OJ, one of them. Anyway, wouldn't you want to hire him as your lawyer? I mean, uh, because he's famous.
Yeah.
The Kardashian, the actual Rob Kardashian, also, on OJ's defense team. So people probably love to hire him, or at least he was associated with OJ. So it just probably in some people's mind, the way that we tend to make celebrities out of criminals and not so nice people, probably that would be an advantage to seeing him.
Yeah. Yeah. I think people are just fascinated by it, right? Like,
Yeah.
I probably would book an appointment with him. Let's be real.
Curiosity would get the better of you.
Right.
Another interesting aspect was Eric struggling with his sexual orientation. Supposedly, he had talked that he wasn't quite sure if he was gay, straight, bi. I assume that he's decided in his life that he's straight, since he did marry. But then again, they've never. I don't think they've ever had conjugal visits with either of their wives that they've met through being prison pen pals. So that's another interesting dynamic. Both of them married while
Yeah.
in prison to
Actually,
women.
and actually Lyle married twice. So
Yeah,
he married while in prison, and then they got a divorce because he was cheating on her in letters with another woman.
which
And then he married that woman.
yeah. And Eric, I think, has been married to the same woman, but I don't even think they've consummated either of those marriages. I don't think they're allowed conjugal visits.
No, I don't think they're allowed. Yeah.
So, and that just goes to show you, if Reddit is like the armpit of the internet, but if you ever want to go there, there's like whole like subs where women that are just absolutely fascinated by men in prison. I mean,
Oh my
people. I
gosh.
mean, Chris Watts has a fan club. Charles Manson had a
Oh my
fan club.
gosh.
I don't get it. There's just people out there that think that's great.
Yeah. It takes it beyond a fascination in crime, and it's like I think it's a sick issue on their part as
Yeah.
well. Like it's some symbiotic thing.
Hmm.
Um, Eric, by the way, I thought I remembered him denying the allegations, and I just looked it up. He did in 1996 in an interview with Barbara Walters. He clearly said that he is not gay.
Yeah. But he had some questioning as a
Mhm.
teenager or as a young 20 something, as I guess we all do. Well, not all
Well,
of us.
and if the SA allegations are true, that
Mhm.
also might make sense of why he was questioning everything.
True. True. I
Yeah.
mean, I was abused by a female as a young person, and that probably has some bearing on why I, you know, would rather be around women in a strange way. I've never really sat and thought about it, but
Hmm.
it probably does have something to do with it.
I am so sorry, Tracy, by the way. I,
For what? I mean,
that you went through
you
that as a
didn't do
child.
it.
I know, but that just, that's it. We don't have to talk about it anymore. But
No,
I don't make you feel awkward or just
no,
that's
you don't make me
awful.
feel. I'll
I just,
openly to answer anybody's questions about it.
yeah,
I'm 49. I think I say I've gotten over it by now.
yeah,
She's dead. I mean, she can't hurt anybody else anymore.
yeah. That's good.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to think if there's anything about the Menendez that I had so many things in like you, I have COVID brain.
I know I have these
I had
whole
something.
things. I don't like to script when I'm collaborating with somebody because
Yeah.
I figure we're just going to have a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And then I realize I probably should script it out because I forget stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It just, I was doing I was watching a documentary this morning while I was doing my stepping in the morning to get my steps in about Caesar Augustus, and I got started thinking about Caligula, but for the life of me, I could not remember the name Caligula. I had to Google it. I had to Google hedonistic Roman
Yeah.
emperor because I could not remember Caligula to save my life.
Yes, this happens to me too. I don't know. It's hard for me to tell what's just normal with aging and what is the brain fog from one of those symptoms of having had COVID. I don't know.
Yeah. And
But
I also, took the vaccine and had a booster. So I don't know if it's
oh,
that or I don't
and
know.
you had COVID, all three.
Yeah, I've had COVID, I think, twice. I think my wife and I both suspect we had COVID in 2019 before it was mainstream because we had a period up there where we were just sicker than stank. right before it broke in 2020 and February and
Yes.
Christmas. I was sicker than
Yes.
stank, and I think it was COVID. And then, of course, COVID hit. I didn't get it the entire time we were in quarantine, and then I had the vaccine. Of course, my mother-in-law works in healthcare research. She worked on the Moderna vaccine, so she felt it was safe and wanted me to get it because of all the comorbidities I have. So I did do that for her, and then ended up getting one booster. And then I got COVID again, you know. So I don't
Well,
know what it's probably a combination of everything.
of everything, yeah.
Yeah.
I had at my one of my old gig jobs, I had that I was doing in 2019. I had a lot of like regular customers at this job. And at the very end of 2019, like December and then
Mine was
January
December,
2020,
January of
yes,
2020. I was
I
sicker
had
than stank.
so many who were sick and I didn't see them for like a month. And this is before they say that it officially broke here. But I'm like you, I think it broke earlier than that because of people I knew that were just really the sickest they'd ever been. That's
Yeah.
crazy.
We were both, I was in South Carolina doing a show, and that's when it really hit me. And I probably spread it to no telling how many people. But we were both so sick that we ended up having to book the hotel room that the show had put us up in for 2 nights. We ended up having to book that for like a week because we couldn't drive. We were just so sick we couldn't drive. And finally we said, we got to go. We can't afford to stay here any longer. We got to get up and go.
Wow.
Isn't that awful?
Yeah. I just I don't want to get us too far off topic. There's just one day we need to watch a like a true there needs to be a true crime style documentary about everything that happened during the COVID years.
I know.
Everything that they kept from us and pushed and just the things we were not allowed to question and the truth of where, just all of it. Anyway.
One reason I kind of retired from comedy after the pandemic, because the COVID brain, I don't know if I can remember my set anymore. And I always prided myself on not having to have I had a small set list, but it was just, very brief.
Yeah.
I don't know that I could do my set now without having to look at a set list. And I would always
I know.
pride myself. I had it, but I never needed it
Yeah.
because I had my set so well. And now I don't know if I could remember it.
Girl, we have some of the same issues. We should talk offline about some of
Yeah.
this.
Sorry, everybody. We get
That's
off into
okay.
girl talk. Keri and I don't get to hang out a lot, so we get off
That's
into girl
true.
talk.
That's true.
But yeah, it's just strange that now Hollywood has taken a fascination with all these classic cases.
I know. And
I
here's, go ahead.
No. Go ahead. I was gonna see what the third season of Monsters is supposed to be because as I heard it was another well-known case from the '90s.
I really hope it's not Scott Peterson because there is a concerted effort now
To get
among
him out of prison.
to get him out of prison.
Oh,
And this one is BS. The
mm-hmm,
Innocence Project is now looking into helping him, or they are already helping him, or whatever. This guy
mm-hmm.
is guilty as sin.
Yeah.
And just to challenge my biases, I went back and reviewed the facts of the case. There's no way that it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't him. And it makes me sick to my stomach that there's like this celebrity sort of train that people get on where they're like, we're going to exonerate this person. And then I'm like, no, not
Yeah.
every convicted high profile murderer was like wrongfully convicted. In fact, most of them
No.
were not.
Most of the time, the justice system gets it right.
Yes. Yes. And so that one disgusts me. And if that is what they're doing,
No, it's not. It's Ed Gein,
oh,
which is
oh yeah.
the Wisconsin. He's not a cannibal, but he used to make like he'd dig up
Skin.
dead bodies and make furniture out of dead bodies,
He
kind of
made
guy.
lampshades out of
Shades.
skin and
He
stuff.
was like one of the inspirations for Leatherface and Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yep.
So this was one from the '60s. So at least they're not going into doing the Scott Peterson thing. But there's been so much about Scott Peterson. Every time I
Lately.
look at like anything, there's a brand new docu-series, investigative report about Scott Peterson, and I don't understand why we even care. He killed his pregnant wife.
Yes. And had this affair where he kept the mistress in the dark and was
Right. And I
like
think
some of
she
the
was a good
sickest
person. I don't
lies.
think
She
she
wasn't.
realized he was married. She broke it off as
She
soon
was a
as
great person.
yeah,
She
yeah.
came forward and she worked with the police and wore a wire and got him on tape for the police. Like she
Mm-hmm.
cooperated as soon as she found out he was married and that his
Mm-hmm.
wife and his pregnant wife was missing. That was like, She was horrified. Um, but yeah, if you're young and you weren't around during that case, I encourage you to go and look at all the facts of the case now, give it a balanced view, give their innocence argument a fair shake, because I challenge you, I do not think you will come away thinking he was wrongfully convicted. And you
Yeah.
should learn about this case now before they do some dramatization trying to say he was innocent,
Yeah.
which is,
Before they
is
come
going
up.
to be coming.
And then the Innocence Project's going to jump on it, which
Yeah.
is all political. I mean, they did that Marcellus Williams thing, and then after he was executed, have you heard a thing about Marcellus Williams? Not that it would matter, but gone. They use these
Yeah.
old cases as political fodder
Yeah.
for one thing or another. You know how bad the American justice system is. It's not that bad. There's some
Yeah.
issues, but 90%, 95% of the time they get it right. I'd say probably even higher than that. I'd say 98.5% of the time they get it right.
Yeah.
And but unlike Chris Watts's girlfriend, Nicole Kessinger, who I think is an unbelievable POS.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I agree.
I think she knew about it. I think she knows a lot more than she was let on, but she let on that she believed. I think she knew that he was up to something, and I think he may have told her that he did it afterwards, and she kept that all to herself because she made sure she deleted all her communication with him before she was questioned by police.
Well, yes, and also, I mean, if we're going to talk about that case, there's evidence that, well, her cell phone pinged in his neighborhood the morning
Mm-hmm.
of
Mm-hmm.
the crime,
She may have
and
assisted with it.
yeah, she may have even assisted with it, and then she did something unusual the rest of the day and basically turned her phone off and wasn't on her phone all day until she went into work at like 2 p.m., which was unusual for her also. Because
Right.
normally this is a woman who was texting or calling multiple times per hour every day constantly, and
Mm-hmm.
then to go that many hours with nothing, and then goes into work and calls her spiritual advisors, who's in this weird cult that she was in,
Mm-hmm.
and then leaves work like immediately. And then the phone calls with him, there's also another weird thing with Chris Watts is the one of the officers had been trying to play phone tag with him to like get him on the phone with some more questions. And if you look in the phone records, there's this weird call tagging back and forth between her and Chris Watts that night where they're calling it like one of them will call the other for less than a minute and then end it, and then call the other one for less than a minute and then end it, and then another. And then Chris Watts calls, I mean, the detective was also calling him at the same time and kept hearing dead air, and
Mm-hmm.
the officer kept calling him and getting dead air. And then finally Chris Watts called the officer back from his work phone, and then Nicole called Chris Watts' cell phone at the same time, so it's simultaneous calls. Chris Watts is on his office phone with the officer and he's on his cell phone with Nicole at the exact same time. And so what people speculate, they speculate what was happening was that every time the officer was calling Chris Watts, he was trying to do a secret three-way call and get
Mm-hmm.
Nicole on the line so she could hear
Yeah.
what the officer was asking him, but it wasn't going through. So finally, people think he probably told her, "Hey, never mind. I'm just going to put him on speakerphone on the office phone, and you call me on the
Mm-hmm.
cell phone, and I'll put it on speaker and let you hear it all." And
Yeah.
those phone calls happen at the same time. So why would she need to be on the call? Now, remember when she went to the police, she was lying and saying she didn't even know that his wife was pregnant. She didn't know for a while that he was married, all these different lies that are provable. And
She Googled both him and Shanann, like even
before she
before.
met him,
Yeah. Yeah.
she went to his wife's Facebook page all
Yeah.
the time. Like this woman, I mean, sorry, I know we're doing Menendez, but I could go down a rabbit hole in this because I'm with you, Tracy. It's like that woman, and they didn't care because they got the guilty. They're like, we got the guilty
Yeah.
person. But there's more than one guilty person here, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And that she's in like
Mm-hmm.
witness protection or something now when
Yeah.
her whole story was full of lies, and there's lots of evidence that she knew. Oh, there's also evidence he admitted to so before he actually killed them, he talked about giving his wife, what was the drug, to try and cause a miscarriage because
Yeah.
he said Nicole didn't want him to have his first son with his wife.
Yeah.
She wanted to have
Wanted him to. Yeah.
right. She wanted to have a first with him,
Mm-hmm.
and he didn't have a son yet. And so uh that drug, was it Oxycontin or
Yeah.
something?
It was a Schedule 2. It was an opioid. It was definitely up there. It might have been
So
Oxy.
somebody, where did he get that prescription? Because there were no prescriptions in his name for that. But Nicole had a call to a pharmacy around that same time, and they said she asked about
Mm-hmm.
this drug
Oxycontin,
and
yeah.
she got a prescription for it. So it's like, come on. Like,
Right.
and he said he's going to take that secret to his grave of where did he get that prescription? Well, we know.
Yeah. And well, if we're going to talk about family annihilators, talk about Chris Coleman, his girlfriend, Tara Lentz. I mean, she wasn't, I don't think she was complacent in the crime, but she sure as heck knew he was married and acted on and was just putting all kinds of pressure on him to leave his wife and marry her, and was even texting him the day he killed his family. He had told her he was going to serve her with divorce papers that day. And this is the guy that worked security for Joyce Meyer. It
Oh
happened,
my gosh. I don't even know this case. I'm going to
oh
have
my
to
God,
watch
you
this
need to
one.
watch my video on it. There's lots of other
Okay.
videos on it. But he was the head of security for Joyce Meyer. He was a former Marine. They lived in the Missouri Illinois border area there where Joyce Meyer's ministry is. He went to MP school and went to through K9 training. And at the K9 training school, he met an Air Force MP, a beautiful young lady that he ended up marrying, and they had two kids. And he got the job with Joyce Myers because his dad was a pastor and knew her, and his dad's just another POS. That's another thing I won't get into. But ended up marrying her and then getting involved with her old high school friend, whose name was Tara, who lived in Florida. And they had an affair. He wanted to leave her. He started like emailing himself threatening messages, saying that if he doesn't stop Joyce from preaching her BS, they're going to kill his whole family. Just weird stuff, like all these threats. He had security cameras put in. His neighbor, who was law enforcement, had pointed his security cameras at the Coleman house because they thought this person was coming, putting these threatening messages in his mailbox. And so basically, he had told his girlfriend he was going to serve her with divorce papers that day, but instead, he killed her. He killed his two sons.
Wow. I mean,
And
there's
then she was
so,
complicit in the affair and putting pressure on him. I don't think she knew he was going to kill her,
yeah, but she
but
was putting
still.
pressure.
Chris Coleman, Joyce Meyer had to testify, and it was kind of brutal. Because another thing, he couldn't just divorce his wife because Joyce Meyer's ministry had a purity clause that if you end up divorcing, like divorce was frowned upon, but if you divorced because of abuse or, financial abuse, something like that, it was fine. You could keep your job. But if you divorced because you had an affair, you lost your job.
Right.
And he was making
Wow.
like $100 something thousand a year in the 90s.
Wow.
Yeah.
Demon. What a demon.
Yeah.
There's so many of these family annihilator kind of cases. And like I said, like with the Menendez case, it's just I think it's out of all the different kinds of true crime, it's one of the most fascinating. I think there's a lot of people getting as much info as they can on these kind of cases because they want to better understand that line dividing good and evil and how somebody could do something to their own family. Like
Mm-hmm.
how does a person get there or were they always that way? And all these questions that we have about good and evil, I think that the family annihilator cases are the most,
Yeah, because if you
they
think
get
about
right at the
Menendez brothers
crux of
are
that.
family annihilators. They
Yeah.
they annihilated their only other two family
Yeah.
members,
Yeah. That's what
at
they are.
least direct family members, immediate family members. Yeah, you go all the way back to John List, who killed his entire family and then
Yes.
stayed on the loose for what 20 almost 20 years.
Wow.
There's so many that we could talk about. But like you said, the psychology of a family annihilator is so interesting to me because they often fall into three different categories. One, they consider their family an embarrassment to them, which is what John List was. He considered his family had fallen short of being the perfect Lutheran, the perfect Christian, and they were on one way to hell. So he killed them to save them, basically, was his whole thing. You have, they see their family as a obstacle to them having a
Hmm.
better life, which would definitely be the Chris Watts and Chris Coleman, and
Yeah.
probably the Menendez brothers on a certain level,
Yeah. Yeah.
barring any abuse. And then the third one is they were just out and out sociopaths from birth and they really have no feeling. Sociopaths can develop feelings for certain people and have emotional connection, but then that emotional connection can also just cut off, and that could have also been it too.
Yeah. It's the crux of all those issues. That's why I
Yeah.
think it's the most viewed, the kind of true crime probably. That's
Hmm.
just my gut. I haven't looked at stats on like which kind of true crime do you, but I think those are the ones that people are the most like, what? That and cults. People are like,
Yeah.
what?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. What drives somebody to eliminate everybody close to them?
Yeah.
Like, I couldn't imagine laying my hand on my wife or my mother-in-law, who are the two closest people to me. I couldn't imagine ever doing that. Even in my wildest dreams, I those psychotic episodes, I couldn't do that.
Did you ever watch do you know about the Tot family murders?
It's familiar, but you have to refresh my memory.
Sometimes also it's called the Disney family murders. It's this father who killed his wife and kids and stayed in the house with their bodies for, I'm not sure, several weeks.
I've heard of it. I haven't done a big dive into it, but I will have to.
You have to
The
you
Tot
should dive into
family.
that one. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, Scott Peterson is also a family annihilator case.
Yes,
Yeah.
actually, yes.
Hmm.
No, similar.
Yeah. So anyway,
So,
now
any, anyway,
now that we've delved into it and creeped everybody out, final thoughts on the Menendez brothers docu series.
I'll give it a I'll give it a C plus. That's what I'll give it. And say that if you like true crime cases, you will, I think, get something out of watching it. Just because it's a dramatization of a really famous case that you probably already know a lot about. If
Mm-hmm.
you're not really into true crime, like my husband, he thinks people like us are so weird. He will come in, like when he wants to unwind, he'll watch like an art history documentary. When I want to unwind, he'll walk in and be like, "What are you watching?" And it'll be something like, and
Murder
then
porn.
yeah, and then the cannibal did, and he's like, "What? Stop!" uh, so if you're not into true crime, you don't bother because you're not going to like it, and the campiness and the over the top sexualized stuff from Ryan Murphy is really going to creep you out.
Yeah.
um that would be my verdict on the show.
Don't take don't take this docu series as 100% fact,
Hmm.
because a lot of it is dramatized.
Yes.
That's the reason I have to give it a D. At least in the Jeffrey Dahmer case, they kept pretty well too, because that case was over the top. What he did to some of those men was over the top, so they had every right to take it over the top for the docu series. But this, they did it just for the sake of doing it, like you
Yeah.
said. So that's the reason I have to give this one a D, even though it was nice to see Nathan Lane and Vicki Lawrence. Um, the first two episodes are the best. You could probably cut it off there and then go read up on the case and know everything you need to know. But, you know, if you want a much better true crime documentary, I highly recommend I believe it's on Peacock, the assassination of Versace is really good, and Inventing Anna on Netflix.
I
It's
need to
not a
see those.
murder, but it's about a scam artist, and it's just really good.
Thank you. I'm going to
Yeah,
check this out. Thank you, Tracy. Thanks for having
yeah,
me.
yeah. Always a pleasure. And everybody, go over and check out Keri. She has the best place for political commentary, pop culture, and if you need to be deprogrammed from the leftist cult, she is the place to go, because we were both. She helped me get deprogrammed,
Ah,
and
freedom.
yeah,
Woo!
yeah. And we're not a Republican propaganda channel over here, but I think everybody knows where my I'm more center right. And I know they have a lot of
Same.
uh, I have a lot
I'm
of wine moms that watch me that are probably Harris supporters, and that's fine. Do you, boo? I respect everybody. We don't get angry at people over here for having
good.
different opinions, but go check out Keri and some of the things she
Occasionally
says.
come to my channel. Occasionally I get angry at you, but not often.
Yeah.
You can still hang out on my, in fact, I want you to come. I want to talk to people across the aisle, so come and participate in the chat.
Yeah,
Jason,
exactly.
you have such a good attitude. I love you.
Thank you. I mean, I don't care what your politics are to discuss horror movies and true crime, because hopefully
Yes.
we all have the same opinions on true crime. But
Hopefully,
yeah,
murderers,
yeah, murder is bad.
bad. In
Murder
this
is
house,
bad.
we believe murder is wrong. Like, yeah, so do we.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for hanging out with us, and we'll see you later. Until next time, Gen X.
Bye. Thank you so much. Oh my
Oh,
gosh.
thank you.